All right. It's Scott and Lucas taking credit for. We're back. We're doing a round table this time. The table only has 2 chairs. We went and saw a movie on our own damn time.
Yep. And there's only 2 other dudes at the theater.
Exactly. We could have invited them to be a part of the review, but that would have probably been awkward and uncomfortable for everybody. We went and saw Rampage. I'm sure you can tell based on the thumbnail at this point. But
Total dead giveaway.
I don't know about that. But it was about time that we did a video game movie, I think. What
And
with...
just happened to be one that just came out, other than Tomb Raider.
Yeah, we were... Yeah. Anyways, Tomb Raider. Good. Yeah, Lucas and I used to play this game sometimes when we were younger, back when it was janky and or not even polygonal, pixelated as all hell. And now we're here to sit down and try and review a movie starring The Rock, which I'm sure nobody else has done.
No, never. Not even
one time. So, we watched Rampage a couple days ago, so it's probably going to take a little bit of scratching of the noggin to hit all of the points that we want to talk about. But, Lucas, I want you to open up with... I mean, we did this for Pacific Rim. What's one word that you think adequately describes the movie Rampage and your experience watching it?
If I had to use just one word?
Just to open, yeah, just one word.
Probably silly.
That's a good one. That's a good pick. I think I actually used this for Pacific Rim to begin with, but I think my one word is charming.
No, then you changed to anime.
I changed, yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think I opened with charming. I think I may have a huge soft spot for this type of movie.
That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the movie at its core was very charming. It's sort of a goofy premise.
It's very goofy.
I mean, the video game it's based on is literally a giant gorilla that's not King Kong and a giant lizard that's not Godzilla destroying a city. How do you make a feature-length film out of this? Where are the characters? How do you make this a thing, right? And I think it mostly succeeded in, like, creating a story out of that.
Well, we only had so much to work with.
Exactly. Like, I mean, they had to do some weird stuff. There's a lot of things that they changed about, like, the very bare bones lore that did exist at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they succeeded in making a story that, from point A to point B, was a really fun time watching.
No, yeah, that's totally fair. I can agree with that.
Give me some, we'll go general thoughts about the movie and then sort of launch into talking about the details and getting into spoilers and stuff like that. So, open up. Give me some hot takes. Some 3-day-old hot takes.
Well, I did like the monsters designs for the most part.
Yeah, I think the redesigns were kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, the video game, they were based off people who drank soda. Yeah,
it was, well, in Total Destruction, the PlayStation 2 GameCube one, it was a soda thing. In the original games, it was a chemical mix-up at a laboratory. George was a scientist. He was always shown holding an Erlenmeyer flask when it was his human portrait, because they were at, like, I think it was still called Scum Labs. And then in Total Destruction, they changed it to Scum Soda.
Oh.
But, yeah, there were people that got chemically fucked and then turned into giant monsters. But what did you think about, like, the choices that they took with the designs for the characters?
I like how, with George, they made him albino, and they had to kind of... It's the most they could do to originate him from, like, King Kong or Kong from Skull Island. Because, oh, look, this is our gorilla, not generic brown gorilla number 95.
They had to do something to make him still be, like, the relatable hero of the lot.
He's like dude bros with The Rock.
Exactly, but, like, it's like they couldn't do, and we'll get into this, they couldn't do what they did to Ralph, for example, where they fucked up his genetics and made him this, like, mutant monster, and still have the audience be rooting for him the entire time, because he was supposed to be, like, the good guy hero. And I think that just making him albino and making him super cool and having an awesome personality was, like, oof, cherry on top. Baller move.
It was pretty good.
Yeah. What did you think of Ralph? For that matter.
He was interesting. He was a flying squirrel.
He was a flying squirrel mixed with a porcupine, mixed with a wolf, mixed with a fucking predator from the movie Predator.
Yeah, pretty much.
It was a nightmarish time. And honestly, I think of the three of them, as far as like adapting into film is concerned, I think they really did something kind of cool with Lizzie.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're like, oh, because Lizzie was based off generic Godzilla, not Godzilla, basically.
How do we make not Godzilla into something interesting that you haven't seen?
Put her on 4 legs.
Make her bipedal, give her a lot of spikes, make her mean, give her tusks like a warthog.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
They were all over her body.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty cool, though. And, I mean, they did a lot of cool stuff with scale. Like, there were, in the sort of climactic sequence, I felt like there were a lot of wide shots that gave you sort of a feel for how large they were.
Yeah, like all the helicopter shots and stuff.
Yeah, and like George and Ralph weren't huge.
No.
Like they made sense vis-a-vis what they were supposed to be in the games. And then Lizzie comes along and Lizzie's
it's just a tank.
Huge. Yeah, like so much. She's as big as like 5 Georges. It's wild.
Yeah, it was I like that, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a cool thing about that is, so when the MacGuffins fall from the sky that create the monsters.
Oh.
A MacGuffin is it's the literary term for, like, plot device thing that makes thing happen, essentially.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
When the things fall from the sky, it's like George approaches the thing, and he sort of...
He pokes at it.
and he gets a puff in his face. And he's like, ah! And he runs away. And Ralph kind of approaches the wolf, walks up to the thing, and gets like a sort of a mist, like he's walking through a Macy's and he's getting perfumed. You know? But Lizzie fucking just gobbles the whole thing up, and that is a great explanation as to why Lizzie is so much bigger than the other two. Yeah, I think that might not even be what the filmmaker had in mind for explaining that away, but I think that that's a really good way of explaining that.
It makes sense. Significant quantities of it will cause significant changes.
If you eat the leftovers and the Tupperware, you'll be more full than ever.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Alright, so the monsters were very good.
What'd you think of, like, the human characters, like Dwayne?
Oh, yeah. I think once we got to the core cast being Dwayne Johnson, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and Naomi Harris. Those were sort of our 3 hero characters, as it were. Once we, like, boiled the fat off and we got to those 3, all 3 of them were so good. Like, everybody was so... I mean, Naomi Harris and Dwayne Johnson, I think it was Davis and Caldwell were their characters. Davis Okoye and Catherine Caldwell, I believe.
That sounds right.
Yeah, Dr. Catherine Caldwell. They were kind of Mary Sue's in that, like, they just were able to solve problems no matter what happened. They were just like, they'd show up and be like, well, we did it. And that's fine. Like, you know, having your character just do what they need to do to progress the story is like, it's not an arduous thing. I don't have beef with that. And the fact that we have 2 incredibly charismatic actors portraying those characters, it's just they're chewing up the scenery. They're playing incredibly passionate and fun characters. I think they nailed it. But on top of that, Jeffrey Dean Morgan as the cowboy secret U.S. agent with the big belt buckle and the nickel-plated .45 with like an ivory handle who talks like this. My God, that man was amazing. Like, those 3 characters, they were so good. There was not a single moment where any of the 3 of them were on screen where I was like, this doesn't need to be happening. Because they just crushed it.
Yeah, I felt like the movie itself progressed pretty well. Like, there wasn't any, like, super long, winded out scenes or anything like that.
The pacing, yeah.
Yeah, things went pretty smooth.
But the opening cast, we get introduced to these 3 characters. There's, like, a bleach blonde girl with, like, pink lowlights, I guess. And like a weenie.
Yeah, like the nerd.
Talks hot. No, the other weenie.
Oh, the other weenie.
The young guy who talks
the
hot
tough
shit,
guy,
but he's
yeah.
full of it. Yeah. And then we've got our cool nerd friend to The Rock's character, who's like, I guess a research assistant at the
Something like
the
that,
wildlife preserve.
At the zoo, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of liked him. He was pretty good. The other two were kind of just...
They were throwaways.
They were like cardboard
They're like, hey, look,
cutters.
it's Dwayne Johnson. Look, it's Dwayne Johnson.
Everybody, look, it's Dwayne. Yeah, and they sucked. But about 25 minutes in, we never see them again after that point.
Nope.
So it was like, all right, well, we used them to establish some character and stuff. There was a couple of back and forth conversations where we established... This is a very important point. I don't know if you know this, but Davis loves animals more than he loves people. I beat you over the head with that like 19 times.
God. But the thing is, he says he has to go home to his dogs, and you never see the dogs.
You don't get to see the dogs one time, and I think that's the most upsetting part, because I like the idea of him blowing off dates and like not hanging out with his coworkers because he wants to go hang out with his dogs, but I need to see those dogs.
Added in the extended cut.
Oh my god, yeah, the director's cut of the movie is going to have like 95% more dog scenes. There was one single bit during the climax where Ralph shows up and there's like a golden retriever on a bridge, and the golden retriever's like, bark, 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 and then Ralph is like, arr, and then the golden retriever runs away. That's the only dog that shows up in the movie. Yep. Maybe that's one of Dwayne's.
Maybe?
No, he lives in San Diego. That took place in Chicago.
Maybe he took a trip.
Who's to say? I just like these movies so often fail under the weight of their cast. Like you get a movie, and I'm gonna shit on another video game movie, but you get a movie like Assassin's Creed, where the director is incredibly talented, and he did Macbeth with Michael Fassbender as Macbeth and Marion Cotillard as Lady Macbeth. And then the trio moves on to do Assassin's Creed together, because they're like, man, we're going to work together again. It's going to be great. We made this beautiful art house film, and it was gorgeous. And then they make Assassin's Creed, and the Ubisoft Bible for making an Assassin's Creed movie dictated that they weren't allowed to do a lot of things that they wanted to do. There was a lot of studio involvement that fucked that thing up, like, beyond recognition. But they wrote characters that were not suited for the actors that were playing them. Like, Michael Fassbender's incredible, and Marion Cotillard is absolutely stunning. Like, they're both incredibly talented actors. But the characters that they were trying to play were not these serious archetype. Like, it's just like, you've got to cast appropriately for the character you're writing, right? And then you've got a character like this Davis Okoye, who is The Rock. And then you get The Rock, and then he crushes it. Like, it was perfect. It was just very good writing, very, very thoughtful casting, and the pieces came together in that regard, I think. And I mean, of course, again, I'm going to harp on this. Jeffrey Dean Morgan was just a peach. He absolutely is always a delight to watch, and absolutely obliterated it this time. So,
yeah,
big fan of that.
No, that's definitely fair.
Now, I've been saying a lot of good things up until this point. Yeah. I do want to tell the audience, of course, the movie's dumb as fuck.
Oh yeah, it's you turn your brain off, or you're gonna hate it.
Stupid as shit, but it's kind of awesome, and that's why I'm saying these good things.
That's the thing I like about these movies is you just don't have to really pay attention. You can just watch the big monsters fight and not really miss anything.
Enjoy it. And like even the things where there's dialogue and there's characters doing things and there's development and stuff like that. It's like it's not taking itself seriously, so you don't have to care too heavily. It's like you have a good conversation between two characters. Like Davis tells Caldwell about when Davis found George, when he was working with the anti-poaching units
in the military.
He's like Chris Redfield from Resident Evil. He's done 95 tours in Iraq, and he's a super special agent, and he can punch boulders, and he's tough as hell. And he's doing this tour, And he tells the story of how he found George. George was hiding under a jeep while poachers butchered his mother. And then Davis killed all of them because he's a mean motherfucker and he doesn't screw around. And it's like, in some movies that would be played so heavily. It would just you'd have to bleed your heart out. And in this movie, it's like, because the characters are delivering the lines so passionately and with so much fun, you can just watch it and enjoy it. Like, it's still dark, but they don't make you feel bad, you know?
No. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And, like, again, at some parts, I saw the movie, thought it tried to be, like, dark and, like, violent, and other times it's, like, it wants it to be silly. Like the scene where the military people meet Ralph for the first time.
Exactly.
And it's just a slaughter fest, basically.
It's like a halfway between a scene from the movie Predator and a scene from the movie Predators.
It just reminded me of the scene in Jurassic World where the military people have the body cams.
Yeah, and they just and the leader of the team is like, "It has cloaking!"
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fucking...
Or aliens.
Gruesome, yeah. It was just violent and like trying to almost be scary.
Yeah, it's like, you're not scary. This is just goofy.
It's like 70% of the movie is pure just like goofy comedy with action. And then there's like the opening scene. I guess we should do a plot breakdown.
Yeah, we're kind of going all over the place.
We're jumping all over the place. Yeah, we started with monsters, we moved to actors, now we're at stuff. Anyways, all right, so the movie centers on Energene. Energene is a company that specializes in the movie what's referred to as CRISPR, and they colloquially, of course, say CRISPR. So CRISPR is at a time it was a government-sanctioned research project to attempt to create genetic editing. And that was like to try and help sick people and to,
help sick people.
Exactly. Take genetic code and fix it so that people who were, suffering could be made better. But then it was deemed to be a weapon of mass destruction 2 years before the events of the movie take place in 2016. And so they said that you can't do this, it's no good. So the movie takes place on an Energene sponsored, supported, whatever, space station where, because they're not on Earth,
they do whatever hell they want.
They can get away with doing stupid mad
It's like
scientists.
international waters.
It's exactly like international waters. But the opening scene is, it's already gone to shit. Like, the space station is on fire. There's only one person still alive. There's a gigantic rat monster on the space station. They're like, everything's fucked. And then the Wyden twins, who are the bad guys, played by Malin Ackerman and the guy from How to Be Single. They're like, hey, you aren't allowed to come back down here until you grab our samples, idiot. And she's like, I'm gonna literally die. And they're like, sounds like you're gonna die then, I guess.
It's international waters. It's
exactly.
legal.
Nobody gives a shit. It's space. Fuck you. And so what she does is she grabs 3 of, I believe, 12 samples. I think. It was either 3 of 12 or 3 of 9.
Something like that,
and she puts them in the case, and then the rat is running around. And so she gets the case, and she gets herself into the escape pod, and the rat starts smashing on the glass, and then the escape pod goes. But because the glass has already been compromised, essentially she explodes on re-entry. But these 3 samples of DNA editing gas, I guess?
Yeah.
Are in cases that are designed to withstand re-entry. So essentially, there's your MacGuffin. Again, these things fall from the sky, they land somehow only in the United States, like the continental United States of America.
Out of the entire world and the oceans.
70% of ocean that the Earth is, yeah. So that's where we get into this place where all of a sudden animals are growing. And the Wyden twins are, of course, I mentioned them. They're the 2 that are sort of the CEO and COO or whatever. Like, they're the heads of Energene. And so they're trying to create, they say this a couple of times, like specifically, quote, weaponized DNA. They're like, get the weaponized DNA. We'll get the weaponized DNA. Time to weaponize that DNA. Okay, all right, we get it. You're trying to sell bioweapons. Thank you, Umbrella Corporation. Time for Chris Redfield to kick your ass. And so George the gorilla is an albino gorilla. He's one of the last of his kind. He was saved by Davis Koye, who's now a primatologist at the San Diego Wildlife Reservation, and they're good buddies. They hang out, they fist bump, George flips off the rock. It's funny. Everybody laughs. One guy pees his pants. It's cool. Funny stuff. Then George encounters one of the samples. And then also, somewhere, a wolf encounters one of the samples. And somewhere in Florida Everglades, an alligator eats.
Just eats the fucking thing.
It's delicious. Gobble, gobble. And that's when things start going haywire. So essentially, George starts growing. It becomes news.
Kills a grizzly bear.
He breaks a grizzly bear's neck. And they refer to the grizzly bear as the single most lethal terrestrial predator, which might be true. That's kind of buck wild, though.
Like, I can see it. They're
the most dangerous land-based animal.
They're very strong animals.
Yeah, and I got a hell of a bite to them.
They can run when they try.
Yeah, and there's this whole thing. The George is scared. He's afraid, and he's sad, and he's scared, and he's got this huge grizzly claw across one of his chest plates, as it were. And one of the ways that they start to show the effects of the weaponized DNA, what is later in the movie referred to as, quote, Project Rampage, of course, is that wound starts healing, like, at a wicked fast rate. Like, it's like bone deep when you first see it. And then by the time he's 9 feet tall, it's basically gone. Which is kind of cool. It's a cool little detail that lets you sort of understand how things are working. And the Energene team, the Wydens, I think Claire Wyden is her name? Claire and Brett. They're trying to recover the samples. So there's this team of hitmen that they refer to as Killers Are Us, that they send out to try and reclaim the wolf. Because they're like, just fuck it, whatever. There's a sample, I'll just do it. You guys are tough, you shoot guns. And
should have brought the 50 cal.
Oh my god, I should have brought the 50 cal. And that's when they get horror movie shit stomped, which is very upsetting. But essentially what happens is George gets taken by what's referred to as Agent Russell, played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, as an OGA, which is other government agency, into a plane. So George is in a plane. Ralph is wrecking shit through what looks like might be Twin Peaks. This is just a small, like, lumber town.
Yeah.
He's just, like, eating a busload of people at one point, which is fucked.
As you do.
Exactly. And nobody's paying attention to Lizzie.
She's swimming.
She's just living her life. But the Wydens have this, like, quote, contingency plan, where essentially they're going to turn on a radio tower that's going to create a signal that, because of some of the weaponized DNA, it's
just going to piss them off.
Exactly. Only these animals can hear it. And they get mad as fuck. And they want to break it. And they're like, what we'll do once the animals get here is we'll shoot them full of a cure that will cause them to not be aggressive. Then we'll kill them. And then we'll take the weaponized DNA and sell it for a mint. That's their whole plan. So it's pretty basic, like, evil corporate team.
We've got to have money.
Exactly. But the money! And honestly, I think the rapport between Claire and Brett is pretty fun, because Claire is, like, just a fucking cartoon of a bad guy. Like, she's just evil. Everything she does is mean and bad. And Brett is such a wet sandwich. He's such
a weenie.
Exactly. He's like, man, I just don't want to go to prison. Oh, God, what if we don't make the money? He sucks, but he's very fun to watch. He's just like, God, as a person he sucks, but as a character he's very funny.
That's fair, yeah. And it's not like he's like that in real life, probably.
No, I don't know his name, of course, but I refer to him as the guy from How to Be Single. In that movie, he's a delight. He's very fun. It's a good rom-com. It's a bad rom-com. Don't watch it.
I think I'm watching it, actually.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Yeah.
So that's the plot. We've talked about the monsters. We've talked about the plot. We've talked about the acting.
How about the monster fights?
Oh my god. If there's one thing that you cannot deny that this movie delivers on, it's fucking gigantic monster action.
Without it, it would be fucked.
It would suck shit. It would be Godzilla 2012 or whatever.
1998?
No. The Gareth Edwards Godzilla that came out very recently. The most recent Western Godzilla?
2014?
That's the one. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
It almost had no monster action.
That's fair.
The climax of that movie was dope as hell, but it could have used a little bit more.
It definitely could have, yeah.
And they did some clever stuff with some framing and whatever, but we're not talking about Godzilla. We're talking about Rampage. The monster stuff was awesome. It was super cool. Like I guess that's one thing when I was talking about the plot that I didn't harp on too much is the opening scene with the rat on the space station. That was almost as horror movie, if not more horror movie, than the scene that we get introduced to Ralph in. Like, that shit was fucked up. They were going for scary on that.
Yeah, it was very Alien-esque.
Exactly. You see the shadowed silhouette of a gigantic rat disappear in a...
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what are you going for here, guys? And, like, with that being the opening scene, it's like, the rest of the movie's so goofy, though. Why you start so scary? But yeah, the monster action, what do you, like, give me some hot takes, man.
I mean, all the monster fighting doesn't really happen to, like, the climax of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean... I think they pulled it off pretty good.
I mean, even like the horror story scene with Ralph meeting the
Killers Are Us.
Killers Are Us in the forest, and the fight with the OGA on the plane and George, where George is going ballistic because the radio frequency has gone live.
Mm-hmm.
And Davis is trying to save George, but he's also trying to not get killed and make sure there's as few casualties as possible. He's in a tough situation in that scene.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, and you mentioned this when we first walked out of the movie, but there's a great bit where Agent Russell gets knocked out and he's like stuck on a thing, and Davis has two parachutes, and he's trying to get Davis out and parachute him. The two haven't gotten along so far. They're kind of almost like Gary Oak and Ash at this point. Like they're really
rivals.
Yeah, but he's trying to save him because he's like, "Oh, no man left behind," or whatever. And he gets him free at the last minute, and the plane goes down with George on it, and there's a big horrendous explosion, and he gets the parachute onto Russell, and Russell wakes up, and he goes, "What the hell?" And there's like a part of you that just sees Maui from Moana go, "What can I say but you're welcome?"
Yep.
So good.
Oh my god,
man.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that point forward, Russell became like almost a show stealer for me. Like, Agent Russell was a goddamn...
Yeah, I thought he was just going to be like a one-off douchebag character.
Like a dick, yeah.
Who was just going to die, but...
He was so good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I was gonna try and launch into like relation back to the video games or whatever at this point. First of all, we had some very good, again because of the scale of the monsters, some very good like climb the building, punch the building. You got a couple of scenes where they like pick up a person and gobble them up just like you would in the video game. It was
just the one scene.
Well, I mean, Ralph has a couple of scenes.
That's a little different, though. He brutally massacres people.
And there's a very good bit where he jumps and takes down a helicopter, which is very out of the video games.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's awesome. And just the sheer, like, them climbing the building and punching the buildings and stuff. Like, there's the one scene where the three of them are climbing the Energine headquarters. And you've got, like, George way up here and sort of Ralph coming off of a different building and jumping onto the Energine building, and Lizzie sort of going through the building and up. It's wild. It is so cool. And God, there was another good bit in there where when Lizzie is entering the scene, because Lizzie, first of all, Lizzie's the only one that doesn't get mentioned by name. And the fact that Lizzie in canon with the games is an iguana, but Lizzie in the movie is a crocodile? Alligator? Crocodile? Alligator?
Alligator, I think.
Alligator? It's kind of unclear. Like, we think it's Lizzie, but there's no confirmation. But when Lizzie's finally showing up and you finally get to see her, she's like coming down. I'm sure there's a name for this waterway that she's working her way through in Chicago. But there's a ferry, like a triple-decker ferry full of people. And she's moving, and first of all, quick anecdote, the movie looks absolutely gorgeous from start to finish. Every single bit of CG is just eye-catching. It's all candy. Like, it's awesome. And then there's this bit where Lizzie's swimming in, and the water looks great, and the silhouette of Lizzie under the water looks terrifying, and she comes underneath this ferry, this like triple-decker ferry, and just fucking flips it over. And every single person on that boat is dead.
Oh yeah, that's
for sure.
Not even a question.
They are all toast.
Yep.
So that was another, like, because there was always a thing in the water levels in the old Rampage games where you would punch the ferry and, like, gobble up a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So that was a very classic video game. And, of course, I mean, I'm going to give you this one. The most video game-ass reference in the entire movie.
Oh, yeah, the friggin' Rampage machine in the Energy Corp building.
In Claire Wyden's office, there's a goddamn arcade cab for the original Rampage. Oh, and then a close second, a silver medal goes to the scene where George rips the fucking neon sign off of a Dave & Buster's and throws it on the ground, because arcades are dead.
It certainly wasn't subtle, I'll tell you that for free.
So good. I mean, like, anybody who doesn't know Dave & Buster's would probably just be like, oh, whatever, he's tearing up a building or whatever, but it's like, the arcade guy just punched the arcade, this is awesome. It was so good. Alright. So, climax of the movie.
Yeah.
We've got our three monsters.
Yep.
Lizzie, Ralph, and George.
They're free from the radio signal.
Well, I was leading up to that. Yeah. They're heading to the Energene Tower. Davis and Caldwell are trying to do what they can to stop the monsters. They only have one of the aggression suppressing syringes left because the bad guys are bad guys. So what they do is when George is handy, they tear open the cure, put it in Claire Wyden's bag, and then scream, "Hey, George!" And then George grabs her, throws her up in the air, and gobbles her up.
Do you remember the line that Claire says?
Please.
It's like, oh fuck, how's it go again? It's like,
do you remember it? Because I got it.
Here,
I'm feeding the monster to the gorilla.
Yeah, there it is.
Stupid.
Yeah.
Oh man, Naomi Harris was very extra in a lot of her scenes, but she's still, I mean, eccentric, charismatic, fucking delight to watch, of course.
Yeah, no, and yeah, George eats her evil corporation lady.
Mm-hmm. And because she's got the cure in her bag, George snaps out of it. George is no longer a rage.
Batshit crazy.
Exactly. So what we've got for our climax is you've got George and Davis Okoye
with a grenade launcher.
With a grenade launcher and a grenade belt around it, like a bandolier of grenades. About to fight a gigantic porcupine flying squirrel wolf, because he's a mutant, and Lizzie the unstoppable tank. What could go wrong?
Nothing.
Nothing. Not even one time. That's actually, I want to, because there's a scene where when Ralph and George first enter the city, and Ralph and George are both still, like, crazy and mad, there's a helicopter that's taking shots at Ralph, and Ralph's got these, like, sort of, it almost looks like it could be tree branches coming off his back.
They're like porcupine quills.
But it turns out to be sort of like quills, exactly. And then the thing is shooting at him, and he kind of turns to it, and he does, like, a half turn. And then he, like, whips his tail, and he, like, shoots quills. And because of how big he is, of course, he shoots, like, a fucking steel girder through the helicopter and just absolutely kills those two pilots, and it's terrifying. So he's part porcupine. And then when he's fighting with Davis later in the movie, we find out that he's got wing flaps. So, of course, he can fly. Because why wouldn't the gigantic porcupine wolf be able to fly?
That's what Dwayne Johnson said.
Exactly. But, I mean, naturally, of course, the movie comes down to George and then Asterisk and Davis fighting Lizzie. George and Lizzie. Those are the icons. Those are the two characters that are Rampage. And they're going... Oh, God, they're going so deep.
Oh, and Ralph just gets fucked up.
Yeah, Ralph gets fucked. Davis gets fucked up, too. It's a good thing he was protected by plot armor.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. But yeah, the whole end fight, I don't want to go into too much detail on that one, because it's honestly really more of a spectacle than a description. Like, the end fight is awesome. Like, it's very cool. What happens with Davis and George, and Davis is trying to take out Ralph, and George is trying to fight Lizzie, and then you've got this whole clashing of titans, and one of the titans is Dwayne Johnson, because of fucking course. It's incredible. It's just, if you like giant monster movies, it's eye candy. It's just everything that you would need.
Yeah, it was... Do we want to spoil anything, or do we want to...
I mean, we've already spoiled a ton.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ralph just straight up gets decapitated.
Ralph gets his fucking head ripped off by Lizzie and gobbled up like it's candy.
And then, yeah, the big fight between George and Lizzie.
Oh my god, yeah. Lizzie impales George. And then Davis jumps into a crashed helicopter that's got rocket launchers and
machine
Gatling guns. Yeah, it's wild. But, I mean, that fight, I think, is pure spectacle. That's just, you just gotta see it happen. It's so incredible.
Yeah.
And, then the movie ends...
on a funny note.
Yeah, it kind of sandwiches itself. It bookends. Because, I mean, despite the whole horror story on the space station aside, the movie opens with Dwayne and George. And George pulls a very funny prank that he thinks is very silly, because Dwayne says he's got a sick sense of humor. And then they go for a fist bump, and George fucking flips him off.
With his giant middle finger.
With his gigantic, beefy Shrek middle finger. And
Shrek middle finger.
Yeah, and then they laugh it out, and then they fist bump, and it's great. And then the end of the movie is almost identical. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail to beat a dead horse on that one, because you really got to see it. It's just a treat. There's nothing like mind blowing about it. Like, it's pretty obvious, but watching it happen and watching characters that are so enjoyable to have watched up until that point do the thing, it's such a nice ending to the movie. Like, it's
cheesy as all hell.
It's cheesy as all hell, but it's cheesy in a way that it knows it's cheesy. Like, the movie...
It knows it can get away with it.
Well, it's not even that it knows it can get away with it. It's that it knows that it is cheesy, and it embraces it. It's like, yeah, it's cheesy and cute the way that John Wick knows that it's a cool action movie. Like, John Wick doesn't make fun of action conventions. John Wick embraces action conventions because it loves it. This movie steers into the cheesy, goofy, fun comedy because it knows that that's exactly what it needs to do. Right?
That's totally fair. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think... And I mean, again, like, the movie's dumb as fuck, but...
Yeah.
Like, it was so much fun to watch. And, I mean, we did Pacific Rim Uprising. That was the last movie we did.
Yeah.
And some of the table at that point said that the further away they got from the theater, the less they liked the movie. And that's fair. Like, the more you think about the thing, the more your opinion should be formed, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more I think about Rampage, the more I really fucking like that movie.
No, it was fun. Like, like I said before, just don't go in expecting like Oscar or Academy Award winning acting or anything. Like, just turn your brain off and have some fun.
Well, I would say that the acting is one of the stronger parts. Don't go in expecting an Academy Award winning movie.
No, it's not even kind of.
Exactly.
Just expect a top video game movie.
Yeah. And to this point, it's even still 1% higher than Tomb Raider, which was the, up until this point, highest rated video game movie of all time. So Dwayne Johnson came a long way since Doom.
Oh god, that whole Twitter thing.
Yeah, the movie's awesome. I would say with confidence, because Kong Skull Island came out a long time ago, and Kong Skull Island's dope as fuck.
Oh, I love that movie.
But I think that Rampage is the best giant monster movie I've seen this year. 2018.
You liked it more than Pacific Rim?
I did.
Wow.
I genuinely enjoyed this movie more. It had less to live up to, and it knew exactly what it had to be. And I think that in those two respects, it succeeded wholeheartedly.
That's fair.
All right, my dude. This is the time. An arbitrary rating scale. What did you think of Rampage?
I'd have to give it 1.9 canisters out of 3 canisters of Project Rampage.
All right. I like that.
Like, don't get me wrong, I liked it, but again, it was silly, it was
dumb.
cheesy,
yeah,
it was
it's
dumb,
goofy.
but
statistically speaking at this point, it is, we can say with certainty because the numbers show it, it's the highest rated video game movie of all time.
yeah,
What does it have to compare to at this point?
not much. Like
There's
Tomb Raider,
Tomb Raider, which is at 49%.
Assassin's Creed,
Which I think is in the mid-30s, if I remember. It actually might be at like 13. I can't remember.
Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, Silent Hill, which I think is at a hearty 16.
Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah, that's one of the lowest rated films of all time. Double Dragon, very bad.
Street Fighter.
Every single movie that Uwe Boll ever made.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot. But it definitely deserves the number 1 spot.
Exactly. In the field that Rampage exists in, it deserves a crown. Because it nailed it.
They got the high score in the arcade cabinet.
Exactly. Alright. What am I going to give this movie out of 10? Rampage, the movie, I think, deserves a hearty one of my favorite arcade games out of all time.
Oh my god. Nice.